Merci beaucoup. Dans les 10 minutes que je vais avoir, d'abord, je vais parler un peu de l'historique du PSP. Deuxièmement, je vais parler un peu des mythes, soit de l'ANINA plus, et aussi du PSP. Troisièmement, je vais parler effectivement des 10 raisons pour s'opposer au PSP. Et quatrièmement, je vais parler de qu'est-ce que l'NDP est en train de faire pour mobiliser la population contre le PSP. So tonight I'm going to talk very briefly about 4 points. First, the history of this SPP process. Secondly, myths around NAFTA Plus and the SPP that we see constantly in the media. Thirdly, the 10 reasons why we oppose the SPP, and fourthly, what the NDP caucus is doing in Parliament and right across the country to fight this agenda. So let's talk about the history for a moment. Anyone remember what the oxymoronic motto and slogan of the Harper Conservatives was in the last federal election? It was Conservatives, standing up for Canada. Now, right after the election, they promptly forgot that. And as I was mentioning yesterday at the Council of Canadians teach-in, not a single member of the Conservative caucus stood up to say, we oppose this fact that we're effectively repudiating what has been our campaign slogan. Now, this should be a surprise to no one, because we also understand that many members of the Conservative caucus believe that humanity walked on Earth with dinosaurs. So indeed, many members of the Conservative caucus believe that the Flintstones is a documentary. What we can say from this, what we can pull from this, is that no member of the Conservative caucus is going to stand up and fight what is essentially a sellout of Canadian interests. But the roots of the SPP go back to the Liberal government. It was in 2005 when Paul Martin pushed ahead with the support of his entire cabinet, including Stéphane Dion, to initiate the process that has led in the last 2.5 years to the elaboration of over 300 different areas of negotiation. When the Liberal government fell and the Conservative government took its place, as Jessica Johnson wrote in what is absolutely an excellent article on the SPP process, or de-integration, that came out this summer, this magazine. And I encourage you to buy a copy, get a copy, if you can. What she wrote was that there was a seamless transition on the SPP. The Liberals fell and the Conservatives took over. It has continued the agenda of the SPP. Now, there are a number of myths that have been put out around NAFTA and around the SPP. You may have heard over the last couple of days the Conservatives trying to downplay the fact that the SPP is present and the negotiation is taking place. At the same time, you have the Liberals trying to distance themselves from a process that they initiated and that they support at all levels. Now, the first myth of the SPP is the fact that it is benign, that it is just about border issues. It is simply not true. And we'll come back to that in a moment. The second myth is that it continues the prosperity of NAFTA. And this is something that I would like to come back to now. What we have been studying over the last 2.5 years as part of our Fight Back campaign on NAFTA and the SPP is what has actually happened to Canadian families since the signing of the first Canada-US Free Trade Agreement in 1989. What we have been told constantly, consistently, through the media at all levels, is that Canada is better off. Canadian families are more prosperous as a result of the Canada-US Free Trade Agreement and as a result of NAFTA. Well, the figures that we found are quite compelling, and they actually show the reverse. But what is most interesting is how we've got these figures, and you are actually the first people in the entire country, outside of my office staff, to hear what I'm about to tell you. Statistics Canada gathers income levels from across the country. They gather statistics from all 4 corners of the country, from coast to coast to coast. They gather income levels at various levels of each quintile, as they call it, or each 20% of the population. And then they take the statistics they've gathered and they store it in a dank, dusty basement just out in West Ottawa. The figures are never compiled and they are never published. What we started to do a couple of years ago is try to push them to actually reveal the figures. And what they said is, well, we'll give you the raw data, but we can't give you a compilation because we don't compile it. So we took those numbers, ran them through the Library of Parliament, and we have the most recent statistics, of what has actually happened to family income since 1989. The poorest of Canadians have lost over a month's income since 1989. In other words, the poorest of Canadians, the poorest 20%, are actually trying to survive with a month where they don't get paid, compared to 16 years ago. That explains, to a great extent, why we're seeing an increasing number of homeless people from in communities, main streets, and parks of our cities and in the small towns across the country. It has been, under the Canada-US Free Trade Agreement and under NAFTA, absolutely devastating for the poorest of the poor in Canada.